Call
Yeah,
whoever
the
you
deal is
want."
done. We nailed it.
He laughed
Hey, kid,
until he
keep it
heard
down.
who was on
Oh,
the
sorry,
other
who are
end of
you?
the line.
Security.
"Welcome to Story Sphere." He wrote the letter, made the calls, sat in the council gallery for 4 hours, tried every decent door before he tried this one, because that was the kind of man he was. So when the billionaire leaned back in his chair, laughed at the torn jacket and the worn-out bag, and said, "Call whoever you want," he did. And what came through that phone, made every single person in that room stop breathing. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments, what time is it, and where are you watching from? Let's start. For 9 days, Joseph Franklin had tried everything else. That is the part of this story that matters most, and the part nobody in that conference room knew. When Marcus Hale looked at the old man in the torn jacket standing in his doorway, and felt the particular pleasure of a man who believes he already knows the ending, he didn't know about the 9 days. He didn't know about the letter Joseph had written to the Hale Capital corporate office 3 weeks earlier. Typed carefully at the public library on Lama Street, 2 pages, respectful and specific, outlining the situation at the building and asking for a meeting. The letter was never answered. He didn't know about the 4 phone calls to the development office. Each one taken by a different assistant, each one promising that someone would follow up. None of them following up. He didn't know about the city council session Joseph had attended, sitting in the public gallery for 4 hours, waiting for the agenda item that never came, because it had been quietly tabled at the request of a legal team Joseph didn't have the resources to compete with. He didn't know about the legal aid office on 5th Street, where a kind but exhausted young attorney told Joseph that without an injunction, which would take weeks they didn't have, there was nothing legally actionable. The demolition permit was clean. The acquisition was clean. The timeline was legal. 11 days remained. 14 families lived in that building on Lammer Street. Not officially, not on any lease that a court would recognize, but humanly. A woman named Gloria, who was 58, and had been sober for 3 years, and was 4 months away from her Section 8 eligibility date. A young father named Terrence, 29, working a split shift at 2 jobs, who had his 2 daughters sleeping on a mattress in the corner, but had a roof over them, and was slowly and genuinely clawing towards something better. An elderly Haitian couple, Edmund and Celeste, both in their 70s, who spoke limited English, and whose son in Miami was trying to arrange transport, but needed 6 more weeks. Joseph knew all of their names. He knew all of their situations. Now, stay with us on Story Sphere, because what happens next will change the way you see everything. Because Joseph didn't advocate for people from a distance. He lived among them, ate with them, walked the same streets, sat with them when things fell apart. That was the life he had chosen, deliberately and without apology, after the years of loss had burned away everything that wasn't essential, and left him knowing, with a clarity that comfort had previously obscured, exactly what mattered. He had once worn suits, 22 years ago. He ran a small community development organization, had a house on Clement Avenue, a wife named Ruth, who taught 4th grade and laughed at her own jokes before the punchline, and a son named David, who was 16 years old when a drunk driver hit him 3 blocks from school on a Tuesday afternoon. David survived. The recovery consumed everything. The surgeries, the rehabilitation, the years of medical complexity, the insurance warfare designed to exhaust people at their most exhausted. It took the savings, the house, the organization, and eventually Ruth, whose heart gave out 8 years ago, carrying more than one person was built to carry. Heart failure, the death certificate said. Grief, multiplied by years. Joseph knew he had not returned to the life before, not from defeat, from revelation. Sitting in a church basement on Lammer Street, the 3rd winter after the house was gone, eating donated soup on a folding chair, surrounded by people who had also lost things, he encountered something he had spent 20 years professionally trying to build, and never once actually felt. Real community. The specific warmth that exists between people who have nothing to perform for each other. He never left that proximity. He became the connective tissue, the person who knew where the meals were, which shelters had space, how to speak to the county intake office without surrendering your dignity at the door. He became, over years of unhurried and unglamorous presence, the person that Lamar Street called, when it needed someone to fight. Which is why, on a Thursday morning, with 11 days left and every official door closed, 14 families looked at him and asked, what was left to try. He told them he would go in person. He told them he would look Marcus Hale in the eye, and ask him as one human being to another, to give them 60 days. And he told them something else, something he had not told anyone outside of one quiet phone conversation the night before with an old friend. He said, I have one more option, but I want to try the right way first. I want to give this man the chance to be decent before I force his hand. Because if I force his hand, he'll comply, but nothing will change in him. And something needs to change in him. The old friend had listened and said, that sounds like you, Joe. Try it your way. If he won't hear you, call me back and put me on. The elevator opened on the 34th floor. The receptionist looked up, then looked again. The man who stepped out was somewhere between 65 and 75, though the years had been written with a heavy hand. His jacket was brown and heavily torn at the sleeve. His shirt hung open at the collar, worn to a kind of softness that only comes from a long life and few alternatives. His pants were ripped at the knee, a worn canvas satchel hung from one shoulder. In his right hand, clean and deliberate against everything else about him, a modern smartphone. He gave his name. The receptionist made the call. From behind the conference room doors came laughter, and then, send him up. I want to see this. Marcus Hale, somewhere between 45 and 55, silver-templed and confident in his crisp light blue suit and dark tie, leaned back in his executive chair with the ease of a man who has never questioned whether he belongs in a room. Behind him, the city spread across floor-to-ceiling glass, like a painting he'd commissioned. 3 colleagues sat at the far end of the table. 2 men in their 30s, suits dark, smiles ready, and a woman in her 30s to 40s, with pearl earrings and an expression calibrated to match whatever Marcus's face was doing. Joseph told him everything. Not emotionally, clearly. The building, the 11 days, the 14 families, their names, their situations. Gloria's sobriety and her Section 8 timeline. Terence's 2 daughters and his 2 jobs. Edmund and Celeste, and the son in Miami who needed 6 more weeks. He told him about the letter that was never answered, the 4 phone calls, the city council session, the legal aid office. He told him he was not here to threaten, or to sue, or to make noise. He was here to ask, man to man, in person, face to face, for 60 days. Marcus looked at him for a moment, with something almost like consideration. Then it passed. Sir. The word was already wrapped in dismissal. The permits are filed. The timeline is set. What you're describing, these people, they're not legally tenants. There is nothing I can do. He paused. Then, with the particular cruelty of a man who believes it is wit, and with respect, there is nothing you can do either. His colleagues adjusted their smiles. The room contracted around its own unkindness. Joseph reached into his coat pocket and took out his phone. Then you won't mind, he said quietly, if I make a call. The laugh that came out of Marcus Hale was the kind that fills a room completely. Leaned back, shoulders moving, the laugh of a man who has found the exact punchline he was waiting for. He gestured at the window, at the skyline, at the enormous, indifferent city beyond the glass. Call whoever you want. Joseph pressed dial. It connected on the second ring. Joe, I've been waiting. Tell me how it went. The laughter stopped. Not slowly. The way a power cut stops a room. Instant, complete, everything suddenly different. Because that voice. Marcus knew that voice, from Senate chambers and televised addresses, and a private dinner 3 years ago, for which he had paid $12,000 to be in proximity to it. The entire country knew that voice. It belonged to a man who had grown up 3 blocks from Lamar Street, who had delivered the eulogy at the funeral of Joseph's wife, and wept without embarrassment in front of everyone, because Ruth Franklin had fed him soup and believed in him, before he had given anyone reason to. Joseph said into the phone, about how we expected. "I'd like you to speak with Mr. Hale, if you're willing." A pause. Then, "Put him on." Joseph extended the phone across the table. His arm didn't tremble. His face hadn't changed once. Not when Marcus laughed. Not now. Marcus took it. Nobody spoke for 4 minutes. The 2 men stared at the glass. The woman looked at her hands. Marcus went very still, then nodded, then pressed his free hand over his mouth. The involuntary gesture of a man receiving something he has no prepared place to put. When he set the phone down, his face had genuinely changed. Not shattered, opened. He looked at Joseph. "You knocked on every door first," he said. His voice had lost everything it was built from. The letter, the calls, the counsel, the legal office. He stopped. "You tried every decent way, before you came here." "Yes. I wanted to give you the chance to do it because it was right." Joseph's voice was quiet. "Not because you had to." Marcus was silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice had lost its architecture. Every layer that power and comfort builds over a person, gone. "I looked at you and I saw nothing. A punchline. I've been doing that my whole career, and I genuinely stopped noticing I was doing it." He paused. "I'm sorry. Not as a formality. I'm sorry. It matters that you know it." Joseph said, "Hold on to that. Don't let comfort make you forget it." Marcus straightened. 60 days. Real help, funding, contacts, placement, not just time. A pause that cost him something. "But I need you to tell me what that looks like, because you know these people, and I don't." For the first time since he entered the room, something softened around Joseph's eyes. "I know what it looks like," he said. "I'll show you." He walked back through the lobby, through the glass doors, onto the sidewalk, where the city moved around him exactly as it always had, without ceremony, without slowing down. His jacket still torn, his satchel still worn thin. He stood for a moment and thought about Gloria, and Terence, and Edmund and Celeste, waiting in a building that would still be standing tonight. Today, 60 days had been won. 14 people had more time, and a man on the 34th floor had felt something crack open in him, that might, if tended carefully, become something better. Joseph Franklin put his phone in his pocket, and walked back toward Lamar Street. He had people waiting. Thank you for watching Story Sphere. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today.